Welcome to Lecture 18, Marketing, Scams, and Urban Legends. Today we have easy access to vast amounts of information. It's much easier to create information today than in our recent past. Unfortunately today there's really no one filtering the information for us, so not only do we have easy access to vast amounts of information, we have easy access to vast amounts of misinformation. Before information was being passed through newspaper and magazine editors, for example, and now the information can just be posted. We need to be able to use our critical thinking in order to filter out this information, to filter out the good information from the bad information, and now we have to do it for ourselves. We cannot rely on other people. And this is where a lot of scams come up. For example, many of you might have received an email from Nigeria saying that some distant relative has passed on and left you $87,000. All you need in order to get this $87,000 is to send a small check of a couple $100 away and to get all the paperwork processing fees done, and the next thing you know, this $87,000 is going to be credited to your bank account. Now, hopefully none of you have actually fallen for this scam, because that's what it is a scam. But this is a $5 billion a year industry, a $5 billion a year industry. You know, there's enough people doing it now, and there's a variety of different types of Nigerian scams. But it seems like most of these emails seem to come from Nigeria, which is why we call it the Nigerian scam. It plays on our greed, and we are just kind of like naturally greedy individuals. I have a quick little video here on the short change scam. It's really interesting. If you want to see the video you show up in class, or do a quick YouTube search for short change scams, and you'll pull up several different ones actually to show you how to do it in case you want to start conning people. But when we're looking at scams, we want to look at some red flags. What are some things that identify something as being a scam? Some things you need to, these red flags pop up, you say, ooh, I want to think about this a little bit more before I jump into it. For example, is the tone of the information you get either political or very emotional? So a good sign you start getting political information, that it's biased, it's leaning toward one way, they're trying to convince you of something, or something is very emotional, we're looking at red flags. It doesn't necessarily mean that the information is bad, but you want to use your critical thinking skills and spend some time to evaluate that information, leaving out the emotions part of this. If you receive an email or you look at a web page, you want to look to see if there's links to other web pages, links to authoritative sites, and actually take the time to click on some of these and follow these links to see what they are. Do they actually work? Do these links take you to legitimate authoritative sites, or do they take you to sell sites or other sites that just any Joe Blow could have put up? Some scams, they'll provide you images or pictures that seem to be evidence, but what they do is provide you pictures that are out of context. This is one that many people received in an email. I know I received this one in an email, where it's actually an anti-Islam picture. An anti-Islam email was going out saying that there was a mass wedding where all of these young men were married to child brides. Really, you know, what do you want to do about this? This is what this email was purporting, and it was gathering funds for this anti-Islamic group. It turned out that, yes, there was a mass wedding, but these young girls in this picture, they were not the brides. They were like what we would consider the flower girls. They were just the escorts. And in this particular region, that was tradition. That's part of their culture. But the photographer who took this picture took it totally out of context. One of the ways you want to look at this is, if this is really true, How was it that the mainstream media missed this? If this was really true, the mainstream media would have picked up on it. They have reporters all over the world. They share information. There's news services that share information. When something big happens in the world, the mainstream media actually does pick it up. If it's not CBS, then it's ABC, or it's Rutgers, or it's USA Today, or Chicago Tribune, or the New York Times. These really, the mass media, the mainstream media, picks up these events. So if that event actually occurred, how come the mainstream media didn't get it? How come you didn't hear about it on the CBS Evening News or the NBC News, or what didn't pop up on your MSN news page? That's a real strong red flag, is if the mainstream media doesn't pick it up. And you have to ask yourself, is this really how the world works? If you get that email from Nigeria saying, send me $200 and I'll give you $87,000, is this really truly how the world works? Do you really truly have, relatives living in these foreign countries? Did you ever know anybody that lived in these foreign countries? And if that was the case, are you going to be contacted through email, or are you going to be contacted through the regular mail using some sort of registered parcel? So you have to ask yourself, is this really how the world works? Because frequently, when things are too good to be true, things are really too good to be true. Moving on to urban legends, and oh gosh, we love our urban legends. We have lots of them. And one of the things about urban legends is they're all spread by information, and usually disinformation. It's spread through our common fears, that spread through, we don't know really what the intentions of other people are. And so they kind of spreads through it. We have to rely on somebody else to prepare our food. Whether you go out to a restaurant or you buy your food into a grocery store, you're trusting and you're relying that these other individuals are preparing your food appropriately. There's lots of fears around there. We have fears about traveling to unfamiliar places, about meeting strangers. And there's lots of fears, and these urban legends play on these fears, even something as simple as being home alone. What environmental toxins are out there? There's lots of urban fears. I just want to bring urban legends. I just want to bring up a few of them to point out that, yes, these are urban legends. One you've probably all heard about is the kidney thief. The standard story is a businessman goes to a foreign country, checks into a hotel, stops at the bar, has a drink. An attractive young lady comes up to him and starts a conversation. He invites her to the room, or she invites him to his room, as the case may be. Then he wakes up the next morning and he's laying in a tub of ice, and there's this massive scar going down his back. He calls up the emergency center, say, hey, what's going on? The emergency center says, do you have this cut in your back? And the person says, yes, I do. We'll get back in the tub of ice. We know exactly what's happened. We're sending medical crews right now. And that person ends up on dialysis for the rest of their life. A very, very common urban myth. And I bet every single person who's actually listening to this video or watching this video has heard of this one. And it always seems to happen to a friend of a friend. Or I heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from somebody else who saw it somewhere else. It is absolutely an urban legend. When you think about it, think about what is the practicalities of this? If you believe this, what else do you have to believe? Why would a kidney thief only take a kidney? Why not take all of the organs? If there's a black market for kidneys, there's a black market for hearts and lungs and spleens and everything else. So why just take one organ? And why on earth leave a witness alive? If you're going to all this work, why not just take all of the organs, or let that person lie there in the bed and just die? It simply doesn't make sense. It is an urban legend. One that I always find fascinating is the rotting burger one. And this one is that there are so much preservatives in a fast food burger that if you left a fast food burger out on the counter, it would not rot. You might have heard this one. This one actually is absolutely true. If you leave a fast food burger out on the counter, it simply will not rot. But the appropriate test would be to take a fast food burger and then a burger you cooked at home, and cook them in exactly the same way and leave them both out on the table and see what happens. Well, it turns out neither of them will rot. What they will do is dehydrate. Now, if you put that fast food burger in a sealed container and stick it in the refrigerator, sooner or later it's going to start to rot. It has to do with the moisture content. If both burgers are cooked fully all the way through, then you leave it out and the moisture starts to evaporate through and it simply dehydrates. One that's caused a lot of problems is the artificial sweetener aspartame. It's been approved for many, many years, but there's also this claim that aspartame causes all sorts of illnesses. Well, if this claim is true, then what else has to be true? If this claim is, since it's been approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for ages now, then the people who claim this must also claim that there's a grand conspiracy. And it's a grand conspiracy between all the marketers and the advertisers and the sellers. It's a conspiracy with the medical community thrown in, all of the researchers, the government, the media. And it's a conspiracy not just in the United States, but it's a conspiracy worldwide. There are researchers worldwide. It's not just the USDA that regulates our Food and Drug Administration, food and drugs, but all of these other countries also have equivalent agencies that are regulating their food and their drugs. So it's not just a conspiracy of the United States, but it's a conspiracy entirely worldwide. And really, what is the reality of that? We have enemy countries out there, and yet if it was a conspiracy, don't you think our enemy countries would say, hey, this is a conspiracy, your government is trying to kill you, your marketers are trying to kill you? What's really the plausibility of all of this? When we look at all of this stuff, we really need to critically assess the claims. We need to consider the source. Who is telling us this? Is it a friend of a friend of a friend? Is it just some guy? Can we trace back the original? Can we go back to the source of how this story actually began? Can you find one person who ever had their kidney stolen? Can you find two people that ever had their kidney stolen in some bar in a foreign country? Have you actually tried to lay a hamburger out and see what happens? Have you looked for any research on whether aspartame is good for you or bad for you or no effect whatsoever for you? Are the claims either emotional or political? Because all of those claims that become very emotional or very political, chances are they're skewed to one side or the other. We need to look at what's called the cone of plausibility. If this is true, what else must be true? What are the limits of the plausibility of this? If I believe one thing, what else do I have to believe to make that one thing true? And we start getting into larger and larger areas of plausibility, and at some point it just doesn't fit anymore when I have to believe all this other stuff in order to believe this one thing. It helps to be able to consider the scientific plausibility. It really does help to have some basic scientific knowledge. Did you know that your hamburger would simply dehydrate if you left it out? Or is that an aspect of science that you weren't even aware of? And some areas of the country, if you leave out your slice of bread, it gets all soft and gooey and ooey and gooey and moldy. And in other areas, you leave out your slice of bread, and it gets all hard and dry and stale. Something basic, simple scientific understanding, or a simple understanding of the scientific process, the doing the experiments and coming up with the evidence and trying to find the evidence pro and con for your theory. We also want to look and find, are there multiple sources? Or is it just one guy, one website saying this? Look for multiple sources. Even if it's a good scientific study, if it's just one scientific study, it's just one scientific study. If we think back to another lecture, I talked about significance or statistical significance, that 1 in 20 studies will give a false positive. So it's very likely that this one study is a false positive. What we need is many studies. We need many people trying to disprove this theory before we actually are able to say that, yes, this is a good theory. Try and follow this back. What's the consensus of opinion in that field? We look at marketing strategies. Marketers are really, really good at manipulating you. They're really, really good at getting you to think something, to feel something, and specifically to buy something. They use a lot of language, a lot of images, a lot of emotions in order to do this. This psychological manipulation. I have a quick little video here that I'm not going to show, but it shows this magician Darren Brown using language to manipulate the whole population of a shopping mall right here in the United States. And we actually do have a left digit bias. You know, you see something priced $19.95, $19.98. You wonder, it's like, why don't they just raise that to $20? There's a good reason why they don't raise that to $20. There's a good reason, because we do have a left digit bias. People are really truly fooled into believing that the price of $19.95 is a significantly better value than something priced at $20. We have this, it is true. Our brains pick up that very first digit and it begins with a 1. That's a whole lot cheaper than something that begins with a 2. So we do have this left digit bias, and it doesn't matter whether you're buying a product for $19.95 or an automobile for $23,995. You know, it doesn't matter. Whatever that digit is on the left, if that's a lower digit, we see that not just as a lower price that might be, $5 cheaper, but we see it as something that's significantly cheaper. Yes, people really are fooled by this $19.95. And we have a very, very strong need to appear consistent. And we all have this need really to appear consistent. And marketers and salespeople play on this. They'll ask you questions like, can you find a use for this? And you say, well, yeah, I could probably find a use for this. Do you think this is a valuable product? Well, yeah, I think this is a valuable product. And then if you answer all these yeses, you would seem inconsistent if you didn't purchase this. One of the strategies that marketers use is they use something called a last objection. A powerful tool, especially if salespeople come to you, they start talking to you and you come up with all the reasons why you don't want to buy this, and one by one they take all those reasons away. And finally you're down to your last objection. And they say, if it wasn't for this one issue, you would purchase this product. Yes, this is the main reason why I won't purchase that product. And then what they do is they take that reason away. And now, in order to be consistent, you will buy a product you don't want, you don't need, you can't use, because you have this strong need to be consistent. It'll bring up the guilt in us if we don't buy this product. And most of our purchases are actually done subconsciously. We don't even think about them. We just go out and buy this stuff. And because most of our purchases are done subconsciously, this allows the marketers to seriously work on our subconscious mind to cause us to buy products that we don't necessarily want or we don't necessarily need, and frequently products that we can't even afford. They will do things like anchoring, one of the heuristics I talked about in an earlier lecture, where they'll get you to focus on a particular aspect of the product, whether that's the price or the pixels on a digital camera or the RAM in a computer or the cup holders in a car. They'll get you to focus on this one particular aspect of it and anchor to that. A good example of how car salesmen use anchoring, especially used car salesmen, they'll say, well, your car, the trade-in value of your car is somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but let's go and look it up and see and check with my boss and see what the trade-in value of your car is. Then they'll come back to, well, your car trade-in value is worth $3,000, the very top part of it. Well, you feel pretty good now, because you were given this $1,000 range between $2,000 and $3,000, and that auto salespeople say, well, we'll give you the top value of it. Were you anchored between that $2,000 and $3,000, they're giving you the top value of it. That makes you feel really good. In reality, your trade-in value might have been even more than that, but you really don't know. It's what you anchored on it. And all of those satisfaction guaranteed, it takes the risk out of purchasing something. So a lot of products will advertise the satisfaction guaranteed. In reality, very, very few people actually take advantage of any of those guarantees. Even if I don't like the product, I don't return the product. Very few people actually take advantage of this. Have you ever seen the advertisements on television for medicine? Do you suffer from X? Well, take this medication. Do you suffer? We don't even know what the illness is, but you suffer from these symptoms, and so I'm going to ask my physician for these medications. It's the subconscious aspect. The marketers are coming at us over and over and over again, telling us, hey, that we do suffer from this, we should take this medication. That the heuristic of availability, the more often we see it, the more likely we are to believe it, the more trust we have in it. And that's one of the big reasons why you get these commercials over and over and over again, because the more you see it, the more you believe it, the more you trust it, the more you want it. You know anybody ever involved in multi-level marketing? Multi-level marketing, greater than 95% of all people involved in multi-level marketing actually lose money. The only people who gain money in multi-level marketing are those individuals that are fairly high up on the pyramid. If you have to go out and get 5 salespeople to follow you, and they have to go and get 5 salespeople to follow you, and they have to go and get 5 salespeople to follow you, and they have to go and get 5 salespeople to follow them, eventually that bottom pyramid, the number on that bottom pyramid, is greater than the population of any community. Very quickly, the number on the bottom level of that pyramid becomes greater than the entire population of the globe. Multi-level marketing only works for the people on the higher levels. Beyond that, it doesn't work. But multi-level marketing has this other little scheme on it. If I want you to believe in a product, what I get you to do is sell that product to somebody else. And as you start selling that product to somebody else, you start talking up the benefit of that product, and you believe in that product even more now. So now what I've created with this multi-level marketing is a vast customer base of people that are not going to make money selling the product, but they become very loyal customers because they're used to presenting that product to somebody else. Along those same lines, we have something that's simply called snake oil. Snake oil is a term that we use for the dubious health claim products. And you've all seen the dubious health claim products. Homeopathic medicine is rampant with them. You see it on the advertisements for weight loss. Take this product and then eat anything you want to. None of them are scientifically tested to be valid, but the advertisements come on, they have all these anecdotal evidence, all these stories coming through. They bring up the positive emotions. You know, if somebody came out with a great product, if a pharmaceutical company came out with a great product that you could take this pill and then eat anything you wanted to and then still lose weight, they would make an absolute fortune. If somebody came out with a product that you drink this tea and you're never going to get a cold again, that pharmaceutical company, whoever came out with that, would make a fortune. That physician would go down in the history books as being one of the greatest physicians, greatest researchers ever. But it's not the pharmaceutical companies, it's not the physicians that are coming up with this. It's Joe Blow down the street, around the corner, that's coming up with this. They're not doing the scientific studies. They're not doing all that research. They have a lot of very, very dubious health claims. These claims that are just really, really too good to be true. And because they're so good to be true and the pharmaceutical companies haven't came up with it, the physicians don't agree with it, all of these too good to be true claims come up. What they frequently have to do is to incorporate conspiracy theory. That this conspiracy theory says that the pharmaceutical companies are saying, the medical community is saying, and all these research communities are saying that my product is no good because they can't make money off of it. They're trying to suppress this. It goes against the powers that be. Well, it's just absolutely not true. If this product worked, the pharmaceutical companies, the physicians would make a fortune off this thing. They have a strong tendency to appeal to wishful thinking. It's so much more nicer to say, I can drink this juice or drink this tea or take this vitamin and all of my illnesses will be cured, as opposed to actually having to change my lifestyle, to alter my diet, to exercise. Altering my diet and exercising is very, very difficult. It's hard to do. So instead, I'm going to keep up with my lifestyle I'm going to take this pill. It's this wishful thinking. I can lose weight without effort. I can exercise for only 4 minutes a day and really get the full effect of having exercised for an hour or two. These claims have a strong tendency to rely on testimonials. Testimonials are anecdotal evidence. They're very, very compelling. We as human beings are compelled by personal stories. We're compelled by the emotional stories. We like to hear people's stories. We get fascinated by hearing people's stories. But all these anecdotes, they're not controlled for. And the only people that give the anecdotal stories are the ones that are actually successful. You don't hear the stories of the people that aren't successful. You don't hear the stories of the people that actually died. You only hear the people of the stories of the survivors. The pseudoscience individuals, these testimonials, which would you rather hear? A good personal story or the raw data and the facts? Which is more compelling to you? And those personal stories are frequently more compelling. And frequently they will quite simply misrepresent scientific evidence. Totally misrepresent scientific evidence. That there's all of this evidence, and they'll pick and choose little bits of the evidence to use in their advertisement, to use in their marketing. Very, very common that existing scientific evidence is taken out of context and put into marketing for the snake oil products. It doesn't matter what the product is. I could probably find some scientific evidence somewhere out of context in some study that will support my claim. This is where we get into all of these scams, all of the marketers trying to manipulate us. In our next lecture, we're going to talk about science, the media, and democracy.